Good morning, friends. So I wanted to film a quick reading vlog. By this time you'll probably have seen some of my other Disney vlogs, so you'll know that in August my family took a really quick trip. Today we're at the Yacht Club. This is such a lovely lobby and such a bookish lobby. Isn't this like library goals? Look at this giant globe right here, it's so beautiful. And all the seating is so pretty. These benches in the window always look like something from Jane Austen. I think Emma sits in a bench like this in one of the movies. It looks like a beautiful morning though. Yeah, it's pretty hot. Not too hot yet. I'm sure it's gonna get hot today. This has been such a short trip. I haven't had a whole lot of time to read, but I did bring my Kindle and load it up with a couple new books. Guys, when I downloaded this, I saw the HG and I thought it was a PG, so I just assumed this was a PG Woodhouse book because my mom had been reading it, but it's H.G. Wells. I'm a couple pages into it and I don't hate it yet, so I figure I'll keep going. I actually haven't read a whole lot by H.G. Wells, and then I was also realizing I've never read 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, so I downloaded that and figured I might dabble in it. The Yacht Club probably isn't too bad of a place to be reading 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Friendship is probably loading up to go out to Epcot or Hollywood Studios. Morning is one of my favorite times at Disney World because not everyone is up yet, so it's nice and quiet, it's not too hot, but it's so lovely when you have spaces like this kind of all to yourself and you can pick, do I sit on that bench and read? Do I sit on that bench and read? Do I sit in that rocking chair? There's so many cozy corners here to just sit and enjoy. I like the way 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea pulls you in right away. For some time past, vessels had been met by an enormous thing. And then first somebody finds it on one side of the world and somebody else finds it on the other side of the world. That it did exist was an undeniable fact. And with that tendency which disposes the human mind in favor of the marvelous, we can understand the excitement produced in the entire world by this supernatural apparition. This sounds like what still happens today. The question of the monster inflamed all minds. Editors of scientific journals quarreling with believers in the supernatural spilled seas of ink during this memorable campaign, some even drawing blood, for from the sea serpent they came to direct personalities. So they went right for the jugular, right for the personal insults, which is still what happens. I was so glad that you guys seemed to like the new reading vlog style, because when I was filming it and editing it last month in July was the first month I did the kind of reading vlog. Usually I do the kind of sit down in front of the camera with a big stack of books and just review everything at once, but it is a lot more fun doing it like piece by piece because I feel like I remember things more and I like remember the quotes I loved. I am kind of a quotation hoarder. Like I love finding like fun lines, and in last month's vlog I was constantly like, oh look at this line, look at this line, and I was kind of afraid you guys would be like, oh my gosh. But you all seem to like it, and I loved reading all of your comments. They were so kind. So I'm definitely excited to do another reading vlog. And this month I feel especially lucky because I can film part of it in such lovely surroundings. There he is, Mr. Dorian Gray.
This chilling challenge to find a way out.
Oh, I saw the footprints. I see more footprints. Athos and I are just discussing a potential spooky Halloween readathon. Spooky Book October. You're all invited. We will announce the books here on my YouTube channel. So stay tuned for that. If you have any suggestions, what in a Haunted Mansion other than Portrait of, or not Portrait of an Artist of a Young Man, other one, Dorian Gray.
I heard The Time Machine was spooky.
Oh, really?
That was also one of the ones I read in October.
Yeah, we should tell them the ones we have read. We have read Frankenstein, obviously, Dorian Gray, House of Seven Gables. What other haunted Madame Leota never wrote a book, did she? Madame Leota, what book should I read next?
Mystic question.
That's the mystic question.
What spooky book?
What spooky book? Tell me.
It is just black.
It is black. I'll lighten it in post. No, I think he just stole that bust from the library. The one sitting on top of the fireplace. Ready for the duel. Bang. Pardon me, are you Aaron Burke, sir? Whoa, I never noticed the ghostly arrow before. Rest in peace, our old friend. Yours and mine, Mr. Toad.
Thank you. Look at this place. Isn't it gorgeous?
I don't even want to eat this. He is so cute. I didn't bring a book. I should have brought one. I know for once. When do I ever not have a book on me? How is this happening?
So good.
So pretty.
Matches perfectly. Yeah, match. So we're back from Disney and I just ordered this book and I'm kind of annoyed with myself that I didn't take the time to order it before we left, but we didn't actually go to the Animal Kingdom Lodge, so I'm sure I've mentioned this book on my channel before. I'll have to find some footage because this book, the zebra print cover edition, is in the Sunset Lounge at the Animal Kingdom Lodge at the Jumbo House. It also has all sorts of photographs of Osa Johnson. There's one where she's holding a bunch of cheetah cubs and she just looks so fabulous and her lipstick is perfect and she's out there in the middle of the jungle. She and her husband traveled the world and were basically some of the first travel vloggers. Her husband was a photographer and then also experimented with moving pictures, which were brand new back then. It's cool to hear her husband Martin Johnson's story too. Apparently they're both from Kansas, but Martin always kind of dreamed of travel and adventure. He came across this notice that Jack London, the famous author, was preparing to set out on this trip around the world, and he was taking a crew of 7 with him, and there was an opening on the cruise. So Martin Johnson wrote Jack London a letter and ended up being chosen. He was hired as a cook, but apparently he was a terrible cook. But anyway, that was kind of his first foray into travel, and then he ended up going back to Kansas and opening a movie theater because he'd taken all these photos when he was traveling, and so he basically kind of gave a little presentation at the theater about his travels and all the things they'd seen, but they decorated the front of the theater to look like the prow of the ship that he'd been traveling on with Jack London. I think it was called the Snark or something. It had a great name like that. But I just thought that sounded so cool. What great theming. Yeah, so anyway, I'm so excited to finally be actually reading this book because I've seen it so many times behind the case. I just found it on the Amazon Marketplace. There was a used copy that wasn't too expensive, and it's actually in pretty good shape. There's not even too much highlighting or underlining in this cover. Not only has this book been super fun to read, it's also going to be the perfect background prop in any future Disney videos that I do. One thing I've loved in this so far is that whenever anyone tells Osa that, oh, she looks too frilly, will she be able to make it? She's just a woman. She's like, the longer you stand around waiting, the longer you're going to delay us because I'm coming whether you like it or not. So let's just get going. I actually have another new book to show you guys. My mom bought me this Being Salman by Jasim Khan. It's in English. This is about the actor Salman Khan, who's like a big Bollywood star. I've recently become kind of addicted to Bollywood movies, and Salman Khan's are some of my absolute favorites. One of the ones that we watched first, and we've now watched multiple times, is, I'm probably saying this wrong, but Prem Ratan Dan Payo. Oh my gosh, guys, that's now one of my favorite movies ever. It's so gorgeous, like dance sequences and the settings and the costumes, and oh my gosh, it's absolutely amazing. I think it's on Netflix at the moment. Also, Sultan, incredible, and Bharat Bhajan. Again, I'm not positive on the pronunciation. I'll just put like the movie posters on the screen here. But I love the songs from these movies. I love the characters and the storytelling, and they're just incredible. And Salman Khan is, of course, kind of fantastic. So when my mom spotted this, she was like, this will be fun. I can't wait to read it. I rearranged my shelves again just a little bit. Mostly these upper two shelves. I kind of moved some books up there. I'm missing a couple of the Virginia Woolf. These are the Virginia Woolf vintage classics. At some point I'd like to add the rest of them. I do have all the beautiful Jane Austen vintage classics there though. And of course the beautiful Penguin English Library. I was reading Oliver Twist, and I'm afraid I got so carried away with I Married Adventure that I have neglected Oliver Twist. Guys, I've been loving this book so much, and I especially love all the photographs, because there are just so many photographs in here from their adventures, because of course they were photographers. They were also videographers. When sound was introduced into movies, they also brought along sound equipment. My favorite photo so far, hold on, let me find it. Oh, where'd it go? There, this one. How awesome is that? They ran into someone who actually raised tame zebras, who you could ride. But gosh, these photos are just gorgeous. They found this lake in Africa and built houses there so that they could live there for a couple years to really get tons of photographs of the wildlife, elephants and lions. In this passage, they could hear the lions as they were trying to get to sleep. Tired as I was, I couldn't sleep for their racket, and after a while began to identify them by their roars. One had a particularly deep, long-drawn, sepulchral tone, of which I'm sure he was very proud. It had a rain-barrel quality that was magnificent and spine-chilling, and I visualized him as a great tawny beast. With this bit of whimsy, I got over the uncomfortable feeling that I was a sort of Lady Daniel. Look at this. This is the Duke and Duchess of York, who became King and Queen of England. So this is Queen Elizabeth's parents, came out and visited them on safari. This is the Duchess of York, so the Queen Mother. Yeah, these photos are so cool. They really got some amazing shots. At one point they need funding for a new safari, and so they go to, I think his last name was Eastman. He was the head of the Kodak company, and he ends up, you know, giving them backing and then also coming out to visit them. So when Mr. Eastman, the head of the Kodak company, is going back, he says, "Back to the world of fraud and front," he sighed a little. "At any rate, wherever I happen to be, it's going to be nice to think of you two, your fine work together, your fine lives together." Last month I did a little stationery haul in my reading wrap-up, and I showed this wreath which I was in the process of constructing. It's from Paper Source. They have these really cool wreath sets, and they give you all the materials and all the instructions, and I think it came out so beautifully. I'm so excited. Now I just have to find the perfect place to put it up. Well, friends, I have just finished I Married Adventure by Osa Johnson, which I enjoyed so much. The only problem is I feel like I'm going to need to bring it with me the next time I go to Disney, and bring it to the Animal Kingdom Lodge and read it in the Sunset Lounge, which is where a bunch of their photographs are displayed, and where this book is on display as well. I love how they conquer every new challenge that comes in their way, and like every new opportunity they jump on, like when air travel became more common and you know, kind of personal airplanes were around. Martin and Osa realized how that would kind of revolutionize their work, to be able to move around so easily, you know, to travel by air and to be able to take photos from the air. So both of them went and signed up and took pilot's lessons, and I love what a great team they are. It's like they really work together. So yeah, I didn't really know Osa and Martin's story prior to reading this, so I really enjoyed reading it, and I really want to go and find some of their videos, because I was able to find some on YouTube, and of course there are lots of photos in this book, which is pretty fantastic, but she mentions lots of like different shots or different clips that they got that were amazing, so now I want to go find those clips. So you guys know that I love used books and old books, and a lot of times out of print books. So there's always like a list I have of books that I'm, you know, looking for on like ABE Books or like the Amazon Marketplace, and like trying to find a good priced one. I Married Adventure was one of those books, and another was this one right here, Henrietta's House. How adorable is that cover? It's just the cutest, sweetest thing. So this is by Elizabeth Goudge, one of my favorite authors, and this is another, both of these books are actually in the Torminster series. So the kind of main book in the series is The City of Bells, which is one of my all-time favorite books by Elizabeth Goudge, or by anybody. The main character opens a bookshop books are always the best. But anyway, A City of Bells is basically an adult novel. These two, I think, are basically children's novels, although Elizabeth Goudge, anything she writes is kind of amazing, because The Little White Horse, probably her most famous work, is technically a children's novel, but it's fun to read at any age. Sister of Angels is a Christmas story about Henrietta. It's a paperback published by Girls Gone By, and I knew there was a paperback of Henrietta's House. So I'd had my eye out for it, and I finally found one that wasn't too expensive. So I'm so excited to have it and read it, because I haven't read this one yet. I think this is also sometimes published as The Blue Hills. It's very mysterious the way Elizabeth Goudge's novels like sometimes have multiple names. Like Blue Dolphin Street was published as Green Dolphin Street, which I mentioned a couple months ago. I recently read, so good. It was originally published as Green Dolphin Country in England, but I think the movie, I'm not sure if the movie's called Green Dolphin Street or Green Dolphin Country. It's funny how they decide to like rename things, and then later it just makes it confusing. I had a buy one, get one free coupon on cookies at Barnes & Noble, burning a hole in my pocket this month, so I obviously had to go use it. And then I got pulled in by these Everyman's Pocket Poet series, which are so pretty. In the French poetry book, I found a familiar name in the index, Charles Baudelaire, which, if you've ever seen Impression de France at Epcot at Walt Disney World, he is quoted in the film. And in one of these poems, there was a line that was very similar. I questioned one of the men and asked him where he was going. He told me he didn't know, nor did the others, but obviously they were going somewhere, since they were driven by an invincible need to go. In the movie, there's a line that they leave for the sake of leaving, and without knowing why, they always say, we must go, but apparently that's from another poem called The Voyage. I also stopped by and looked at the cookbooks. The cookbooks are always so tempting. I kind of want to get that Magnolia Table one. It looks beautiful. Did I manage to make it out of Barnes & Noble without buying anything? No, I did not. In the end, I decided to go for the Poets of Rome instead of French poets, although I probably will buy the French poets one someday too. I really like that, but look at this cover. It's so pretty, and I love the Roman girl on the back too. It's so lovely. Now I feel like I'm going to need to go back to Rome, because these are about all sorts of different places from different time periods and different poets about their time in Rome. So it just sounded really fun. So here's my small but growing stack of Everyman Library Pocket Poets. The ones I have so far are, of course, the new Poems of Rome, but then also the Four Seasons, which I absolutely love this one. It's split up into, of course, summer, spring, winter, and fall, so it's fun to just page through it during the different seasons. And then this isn't a book of poetry, but it's by a poet. It's Emily Dickinson's letters. I didn't love Emily Dickinson's poems until I read her letters, and then I just fell in love with her writing style, and I feel like I got used to it a little bit more, because her poems especially can be difficult to come at. They're so unusual. So I didn't get that much, but I have to admit the tchotchkes did get me. I found this, a potted pen stand. How cool is this? I've never seen anything quite like it. I feel like this Kickerland often has interesting desk supplies and just very unique stuff. Here's the pot. I'm gonna put my pens in it. I think it'll be such a cute desk item. Other thing was also very unique. I've never seen anything like it. It's pop open cards. So it's like a flat card, tiny little card that has like a sort of pop out section, which I just think is fun and unique. You can kind of see the perforated edges there. So I think this would just be fun to like pop into like a thank you note or a letter, and I thought the "You're Awesome" theme would go with lots of different notes. They also had like dream and wish and thanks and like a million different themes. You guys, I'm afraid I've been neglecting my reading vlogs a little bit because I've been finishing books and forgetting to tell you guys about them. For example, I did finish Being Salman, which I did enjoy. You're not gonna read this if you're not like a Bollywood and Salman Khan fan, but if you are, you know, I enjoyed it for what it was. I thought it was interesting how the author obviously talks about his life and him in the news and his movies and all that, but he also looks at his family history, and like he goes all the way back to Salman's first ancestors who first came to India. I guess they came from Afghanistan, and his grandfather, great, however many greats, grandfather, was apparently a follower of this, I think, Muslim saint, a religious figure, and following that saint was how he originally came to India. But then when the saint died, he had said where he wanted to be buried. It was in this, like, a couple of towns over. But the, like, leader of the town where he'd been living was like, no, I want him to be buried here. Against his wishes, buried his body in her town, but his followers, including Salman Khan's ancestor, dug him up in the middle of the night and transported his body to the place where he'd wanted it buried. So just cool to learn a little bit more about the history of India and Indian culture. And I do not know nearly enough about, but Bollywood movies have definitely made me want to learn more. If you guys have any recommendations of books about India written by Indians, I would love to hear them. Kate Howe here on BookTube mentioned, I think this was a while ago, a book called A Suitable Boy, but it stuck out in my mind and I've been meaning to look it up because that, I believe, is about India. So, but yeah, if anyone knows of any other recommendations, I'd love to hear them because my Bollywood passion has not been abating. I actually just finished Rob Nabani Jodi. I can't remember exactly. Again, I'll put the poster on the screen. It had Shah Rukh Khan and, I can't remember, Anushka? It's the actress from Sultan, which Salman Khan was in. But I really liked that. So many colorful dance numbers. I've been listening to those songs nonstop on YouTube. Hole hole. Anyway, Bollywood is amazing, and it's exciting that there are so many more Bollywood movies to discover. I feel like I'll never really run out of them. So I don't know if you guys have used Duolingo, but I've actually started doing Hindi lessons. I think you have to do them on the website. For some reason, the app doesn't have Hindi yet, but I'm getting through my letters. It's kind of fun. It's like a game. You do just like a couple every day. Let's see, this part is easy. This part is somewhat more challenging. Doing one little lesson a day is obviously not going to make me fluent anytime soon, but it would be fun to be able to actually understand the Bollywood movies in the original language. Another book that I mentioned earlier this month was Henrietta's House, which is, oh my gosh, so charming. It was just as charming as I hoped. I feel like I need to reread it though, because I definitely did kind of like gobble it down. I just, you know when you're enjoying a book so much and like you're like, oh, I should probably slow down to like appreciate this more, but at the same time, it's so charming and lovely. It's like you just want to keep going and going and going. So in this book, Henrietta and crew are going to the Mendip Hills, I think it is, for a birthday picnic for Hugh Anthony, but almost none of them wind up at the correct birthday picnic spot. They all go on a series of adventures, which are so lovely. I love how she kind of, Elizabeth Gooch, always sort of melds reality and fairy tale in the most beautiful way. The only reason I was a little disappointed in that book is because I was kind of hoping, and this is really all my fault, but in the City of Bells, the house where Henrietta lives with her grandfather and grandmother and Hugh Anthony is so beautiful, and like the description of it is so beautiful, and it's really old. So Henrietta like describes how she can feel like the old inmates of her room, like a monk and like an elegant lady. And in Sister of the Angels, which is the Christmas sequel to City of Bells, you get to know a monk who I think must be the monk who lived in Henrietta's room. It feels like they're the same monk to me, which I thought was so cool. So I was hoping that Henrietta's house would be about the lady, the other kind of ghost she mentioned. It was absolutely charming in so many ways, but it wasn't about the lady who might have, you know, lived in her room before. But hey, you know what? Maybe I should write another sequel to City of Bells, and I could give that lady a story, because I feel like the monk got a story. Because it felt like when she first mentioned this kind of, you know, Victorian lady with her skirts rustling, getting ready in that room, like it felt like she had a story behind her. So anyway, I finished those two. Oliver Twist at the moment has escaped from his thieving companions and made his way to much nicer companions, although someone in the comments on my last video said that the good people in Oliver Twist are so, like, they're almost a little too good that you almost prefer the villains. And these, I should say, are not like the hypocritical people from the parish who were so terrible to Oliver. These people, Rose and the old lady, are really, really sweet and lovely, but when Charles Dickens describes them, it is kind of in like saccharine terms. Like and he was so bitingly sarcastic about the other people that you wonder if he's still trying to be sarcastic, and yet he doesn't seem sarcastic. I don't know, I have a feeling though Oliver Twist has not yet seen the last of those thieves. I'm also not finished yet with 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but I've been slowly plodding along with it. Captain Nemo and the narrator are about to go for a nighttime excursion under the water in their little suits. I bet they're gonna find some like bioluminescent plants and it'll be like Pandora, but underwater. I've been picking out some Henrietta's House quotations for my quote book, but there are just too many. The scene is set in Jocelyn's bookshop, and they're talking about how, and Felicity is Jocelyn's wife, and they say that when Felicity is not acting in London and helping him at the bookshop, she made the business hum to such an extent that one could almost hear it purring like a tea kettle as one passed the door. Gosh, and I loved this description of the town. The little house had a wavy red roof and 2 gables, with a little window in each gable, like 2 friendly eyes, and 2 worn white steps led up to the green door. Like all the houses in the marketplace, it looked alive, as though it were a person and not a house. The Torminster houses were all like this because they were so old that they had had time to grow moss and snapdragon on their roofs, where they thought a bit of moss or snapdragon would look well, and bulge a bit where they felt it would be more comfortable to bulge, and take from the sun and rain the special colors that they fancied. I love the illustrations in here. They are so sweet. Look at that. I love it. Everyone heading off. When I first looked at this cover and noticed the figures on the gate posts, I was a little confused, but everything in Elizabeth Goudge has meaning. The crying child is the naked, shivering human soul, and the imp is the mockery that lives within us, as well as round about, shriveling up with his laughter, the insincerity and pride that keep our souls the stunted things they are. I love how Elizabeth Goudge takes things even like mockery that seem like there's nothing really good about mockery, but shows how even that can lead to grace. So lately I've been spending a lot of time reading the letters of St. Catherine of Siena. I downloaded them on my Kindle. They're actually a free Kindle ebook, which is really nice. And the free Kindle version does have like a little, biography of St. Catherine of Siena. Although I want to read more, I actually just found out that Sigrid Undset, who's the author of Kristen Lavransdatter, wrote a biography of St. Catherine of Siena, so I'm kind of interested to check that one out. But it's been really amazing to read her letters. I know I've mentioned St. Catherine of Siena before. She also wrote this book, which is the Dialogue. This is much more formal. It's a conversation between God and the soul, whereas her letters are just letters she wrote to her friends, to people she cared about. And so when you're reading them, it feels like she's writing to you. She wrote them to people in all walks of life, and she also wrote to popes and people in the hierarchy of the church. She never stopped urging for reform and calling out corruption. St. Catherine of Siena's life is really relevant now for Catholics because we're going through a crisis in the church. I'm a Roman Catholic. I know I've mentioned it here on my channel before. Over the past few weeks, I, like many other Catholics, have been utterly horrified and heartbroken by the grand jury report that came out of Pennsylvania on child abuse by the clergy. I don't even know a word to describe how horrible it is to think that priests would have done this and that other priests would have even thought for a single second of covering it up. It just makes you sick to your stomach. I feel appalled and ashamed and outraged. I think about the one time in the gospel when Christ got angry. It was when he saw the moneylenders in the temple in his father's house, and he threw up the tables, and they were just greedy for money. I feel like Catholics need to be flipping tables right now, but I also feel like what does that mean, practically speaking? Of course, you should pray for the victims, but I feel like action is needed. One of my friends said there should be a grand jury investigation in every state, and I completely agree. Our priests are our leaders. We do not want these people as our leaders. I feel like this is something that affects every Catholic in every diocese in the United States and all over the world. I've been talking about this a lot over the past couple weeks with family, with friends, with people in my local parish. I've been reading lots of different articles and responses from bishops and different homilies. I thought the website Blessed is She, which is a website for Catholic women, had a really excellent response. I know I tweeted a link to it. I'll leave a link in the description below as well, but I thought I'd read this one line because I thought they summed up something I've been feeling very well. We members of the Church have been deeply and seriously wounded by the lack of leadership, responsibility, remorse, and reparation shown in the wake of this new information by our bishops. Only a few have spoken out with a vigor worthy of this horror.
I've been so disappointed by the response from so many priests and so many bishops who just seem to want to like sweep it under the rug and like business as usual. This is not business as usual. This is a drop everything and fix this now. Another line from that Blessed Is She article was, as Catholic women, we will not stand silent. We will let it be known that this is the age when the laity rose up in the time of deep crisis to help Christ and his church. But I do think right now the Catholic Church needs every member, every man, every woman, unordained, ordained, to be a part of healing our church. There was an article I was reading about a victim of clergy abuse in Ireland. And he was saying that we don't need apologies, we don't need words, we need action. We need a plan of action. And I think that's why it's been frustrating to see silence from so much of the clergy, silence even from Pope Francis. Anyway, I've found St. Catherine of Siena to be a helpful place to go for this because she was a member of the laity. She was the only laywoman to be made a doctor of the church. Last month I was reading Dorothy Day, who is a Catholic social worker here in the States. She converted to Catholicism, and she said how she was not a Catholic because of bishops or priests or any of the members of the hierarchy. She was a Catholic because of Christ and because of the saints. There's a line in the gospel reading last week where, you know, many of Christ's followers were leaving him, and Christ said to his apostles, "Are you guys going to go too?" And Peter said, "Where would we go?" And I guess that's how I feel. I am a Catholic. You know, it's inside of me. Christ is inside of me. It's the path that I feel like I'm being called to. And I don't want to surrender my church to these people. Thank you guys for listening. I wanted to talk about this because I feel like it's important to talk about it right now. And I know I've mentioned my Catholic faith in the past. I know there are some other Catholics out there who are watching my channel. I know that many of you are also from a wide variety of different faith backgrounds. And I have so much respect for that.
So I've just been finishing up my September Reads video, editing the video that you guys are watching right now, and I was realizing that I thought last month's July reading wrap-up might be a little bit too kind of haphazard and all over the place, but it's been nothing to August, which has gone from Disney World to Bollywood to French poetry to this terrible crisis in the Catholic Church. My faith is a really important part of my life, but it's never really been like the main focus of my YouTube channel, and yet it's always been there, and I feel like whenever it's relevant or when it comes up, like, it's the right thing to do to talk about it. Like, it would be weird not to talk about it. And especially right now, this is such a crazy situation. I feel like there hasn't been a crisis like this in the Catholic Church for hundreds of years, and no one really knows where it's going to end, but it does seem like it's long overdue. It's frustrating to see priests and bishops and, you know, people in the hierarchy of the church who can still be like so self-righteous, and it's like, this is a moment for extreme humility and like a commitment to change, not for like defensiveness, not for deflecting the issue. The readings at Mass over the past couple weeks have felt so extremely relevant. It's almost like if the priests aren't talking about it, God is. The first week this news came out, the letter from St. Paul that these are evil days. And then I mentioned that other one where, you know, Christ's followers were leaving. And just this past weekend, Christ was talking about how getting too caught up in the rules of the church doesn't lead to holiness, and that evil is something that comes from within and that we have to guard from within. There's a quote from St. Catherine of Siena. It was actually what first inspired me to pick up her letters, because I heard it quoted online. It's something about, you know, we've had enough of being admonished to be silent. I've seen the world grow rotten through silence. Cry out with 100,000 voices. She's not afraid to speak truth to power and, you know, call it like it is to the church. But then she also speaks so beautifully of, you know, personal holiness and really purifying your own life and making sure that you're, you know, getting rid of selfishness and following God's will. Even if it's painful, even if it's not the way you envisioned your life going. I can't believe September is here. I turned over the page in my beautiful Rifle Paper Company calendar right there. I'd love to hear from you guys what you've been thinking about and what you've been reading this month. I haven't done as many bookish videos lately as I'd like to, but I do have some planned. I really have been wanting to do the Tolkien book tag, and there's one day that I thought would be a really good date to do it on. If you're a Tolkien fan, I'll let you guess what day it will be. Thank you guys again so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.